Creative workers in South Africa have been fighting for their rights for decades. It looks like their efforts will be rewarded soon. Parliament has debated the Performance Protection Bill, which is expected to be adopted by the National Council of Provinces. Earlier this week, the South African Guild of Actors went on social media to name and shame individuals who are opposed to the royalty rights of actors. And joining me now to unpack this further is actor and national chair of the South African Guild of Actors, Mr. Jack Devnarain. Jack, pleasure to catch up with you.
Good to be back in studio.
I know you've been in fighting mode earlier this week. You're saying, giving people a countdown of 24 hours, saying, you know what, I'm going to release the names of those who are trying to work against us.
Yeah.
What made you adopt that stance?
I think it's part of our activist approach. It really does take a confrontation sometimes in order to get the attention of people onto what we need to achieve in the country. And just following from the previous clip, listening to the ILO and the rights of workers in South Africa and globally, what we are trying to achieve with these new bills is to allocate certain rights to actors that these actors have never had before. And it's not just about earning royalties. Yes. One of the big parts of it is to say, why is it that South African actors, by virtue of being labeled freelancers or independent contractors, are not protected in their workplace by the basic conditions of employment, by the Labour Relations Act, by occupational health and safety? We are in a precarious position. And hopefully with these bills, and if the NCOP can adopt them, we can then allocate some rights, some protection to actors that have never had that protection before.
And your space, your area, is actually an interesting case study as per the future of work, as we were discussing earlier on. And there are other additional things that pertain to creative people. Things like the rights to their, besides the money, as you said, and we must explore that a bit further. Their moral rights is an example. If you can explain that.
Yes, it's very much a case of the World Intellectual Property Organization deliberated on this for 20 somewhat years before they created an extension of rights for actors who are performing in an audiovisual medium. And they said, well, you know, we realize that you, Mr. Actor, you have delivered a performance and you were paid for your performance, but the production that you are on continues to be exploited, and we have to acknowledge that you have a right to your own image. And if you have a right to your own image, that is a moral right. The paternity right, as we call it, means that we look at Bra Tim and we know that it's him. Why should Bra Tim not have a right to own his own image? And that's what the moral right is saying. And we want to say additionally that we don't want a producer, for example, to take the image of this performer and mutilate it in the kind of way that can damage the reputation of the actor down the line. Because once the actor has been paid for that, we own the footage. And if we then take that footage and we create a horrible, a grotesque caricature of this actor that could come back to damage the actor's career, that is a violation of that actor's moral right.
And this is something that's happened, that's been commonplace for some time, right? I mean, it's not an imagined scenario. This is something that has taken place.
It has actually happened, and in fact, there was a horrible situation about 3 years ago in the US where a producer had asked actors to come onto set. He didn't tell them what they were shooting. He'd give them a script on the day and they'd shoot it, and it turned out to be a horrible story. It was very demeaning to people of the Muslim faith and the Prophet, and it resulted in widespread riots, and in fact a US ambassador was actually killed. And the actors were there saying, but we didn't give you permission to do this to us. That's not what we signed up for. And that's just one example. You know?
And of course, in the era of different mediums, if one could call them that, being used to broadcast the work of creative people. Again, the extension of these rights goes there, right? The digitization that we spoke about.
Absolutely.
And the fact that in the era of fake news, one can take your image and impose it on someone else, so it appears as if you are playing that part or playing that role. And on other platforms, it can be exploited without you knowing or any royalties on that.
That is one of the pillars of our submission as SAGA. When we went into Parliament and we spoke to the Portfolio Committee, we said to them, we have to try and revise the statutory framework within which we work. We are looking at the Performers Protection Act, which comes from 1967. Now, in 1967, there wasn't even television in South Africa. So within 7 years of that act taking effect, the act was already outdated. It could not protect those actors. And to give you an example of how far the industry has moved on, as you say, there are exponentially more opportunities to exploit, to create content, to put content out onto the internet, because in 1967, not only did they not know what TV was, they had no idea what the internet was, or you know, what the other broadcasters were doing. What's Netflix, what's YouTube? All these things are there now. And we have to revise and reform our existing statute so that it must take into account how do we protect actors in this new, in this new era.
And as we started this conversation, it's not the fact that you're just becoming awakened now and you want to be part of a rising movement around the world. You are dealing with real practical issues where your royalties have been denied to yourselves as actors, right, for many, many years. And I know earlier this week you did highlight the fact that some of the broadcasters in South Africa sold on the work that many South African actors are involved in territories where you will not receive a cent of royalties from them. Can you just talk us through that, explain what that means?
Yes, absolutely.
For an actor?
What that is called commercial exploitation, and the broadcaster who will commission a show, they will get a producer and they will pay this producer to create a show. So ownership then vests in the broadcaster, and the broadcaster has every right to exploit the full commercial value of this production, which they then do by licensing to other territories and other broadcasters around the world. Now, obviously, that's one form of taking your product to market, and you get a return for that. Now, in South Africa, there is nothing in statute that allows an actor to claim a return on that. And in fact, what the broadcaster has done, according to recent media reports, is absolutely correct and well placed. It's entirely their right to do that. What we are saying as the South African Guild of Actors is that, but hang on, that right exists for other actors around the world. Whether you want to be a performer in France, Spain, Germany, the North America, South America, wherever you go in the world, those rights already exist for those actors. What is wrong with South African actors having that? And the answer, Bratum, lies very simply in the fact that overseas producers like coming to South Africa to shoot with South African talent because they know that there are gatekeepers to the South African film and television industry that will guarantee them that they're going to sell South African talent.
And some of them are your colleagues, right?
Indeed.
Who are working against you as the guild.
Indeed.
I did follow what you're posting.
Good.
But just quickly talk us through, what are you likely to benefit if the amendment bill is adopted and turned into law in South Africa? What changes are we likely to see?
To continue the theme from your previous clip, the most important change will be collective bargaining rights. And that is something that has been denied to South African actors, again, because we wear that label that says freelancer. And we believe that it is a healthy process to be able to create a forum where actors, producers, broadcasters, and everyone involved in the independent production sector can sit together and decide what is important to us. And how do we decide, how do we plot the course of this industry into the fourth industrial revolution? And why should anybody be doing that above anyone else? Everyone must have an equal stake. Collective bargaining rights will enable actors to be able to sit at that table and to say, understand where we come from and allow us to negotiate fairly.
And many of actors and performers may not know about the existence of SAGA.
Yes.
So where can they get in touch with you so they keep up to date with the developments around your efforts?
We really want to be more active in social media. So as SAGA chairman, I'm active on Twitter and the South African Guild of Actors on all the social media platforms. We have a website as well, and we'll be soon launching a petition to garner support so that we can take this to the NCOP to say, please be on the right side of history and support South African actors.
Jack Devnarain, thank you very much for having paid us a visit, and good luck. And that's our show for tonight. News is next with Tony Ndoro. I will see you tomorrow morning at 9 on the Modise Network, and good night to you.